making a level 1 mistake like he did in game number 1 that ended up costing almost the entire game. Getting into draft, though, talking about what we're getting here. The only adaptation, an Ezreal ban coming out on the side of AL, and that actually leaves up the Rise. So the Rise is going to be the first pick here, and that should open up the map. It's one of the premier options if you want to play for macro.
Yep. And whenever Karis is at least able to move first out of this mid lane, it does allow him to play with Monki and try to help him get some advantages in the early game. Anyone's Legend do respond, though, with a Yorick lock-in for Flandre, and he has been one of the few top laners that actually makes this champion look really oppressive, because Anyone's Legend actually try and play through split push win conditions, you know, not just having the Yorick teleport in every single time that it's up and trying to team fight. You want to hit towers. You want to force WE or whatever opponents that you're going up against to respond to your split push pressure, and at least Anyone's Legend does that.
Yeah, there is a pick in this draft that I do want to call out, and that's going to be the K'Sante coming in here from Cube as the answer to Yorick. I already don't like K'Sante into Yorick as a matchup. I don't think it really is particularly positive for the K'Sante, and I don't think K'Sante's in a good spot in terms of where he's at with all of the nerfs and everything that he's been hit by, so be on the lookout for Flandre to potentially have a pretty strong game here, but it's going to be the Orianna as the answer to the Rise. We've kind of been seeing an increase in a lot of these more standard control mages back into the meta in the last couple of weeks, I think because teams just realize that, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We can still play for team fights if we want to do that, and, Vi jumping in with the Orianna ball can still be a pretty good delivery service, so definitely excited to see that. Top side's taken for both teams. Mean bot lane bans are incoming.
Already, Misfortune eats one of the bans here from the side of Anyone's Legend. WE can respond with 80 carry bans as well as support bans, depending on what they want to start diminishing in terms of overall effective pool. Getting rid of the Lucian, knowing that Anyone's Legend could go for the first jump on it, and there's no dedicated tank that has been picked up for Anyone's Legend. However, the fact that AL were able to so dominantly take care of business against WE, even without a tank on their side, since they had Pantheon Renata as their jungle support, I think WE are very well aware that, guys, they could run Vi and then like Nami or Emilio for Lucian, and they still could roll us. So, well, let's just get rid of some of these early aggressive options.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense here. I imagine 80 carry will be coming in on R4 with the bans coming out of the Misfortune and the Ashe. This signals a bit of a Jhin priority to me if they did want to go in that direction, just taking away other options. But it's going to be the Lulu as that final ban, taking away some Zeri options. It's actually going to be the Xayah, so safety makes a lot of sense. We figured it was going to be something that didn't need a ton of resources in order to be relevant, and Vi, Orianna, Xayah is definitely a pretty classic, trio to be picked in pro play, so no real shocks or surprises on how that is likely going to go.
Yeah, I will say Vi Xayah always is a little awkward as a composition together, because Vi wants teammates or the enemy team to go into her, whereas Vi is going to be going forward with the cease and desist. Now, you can always try and lock down a diving threat with your ultimate, so at least Vi has some flexibility. It's just that when Vi goes forward, she ain't coming back out. And it's really difficult and awkward for Xayah to walk forward, because that plays away from the whole feather fantasy that she has.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the way you want to set this up is kind of similar to how you would want to set up, like even just like walk forward comps, is essentially Vi is going to dive with the Orianna ball alongside the Rakan, and then Xayah doesn't really need any sort of protection. Like, you're allowed to play more aggressive if you're Vi, if you're, Rakan, because Xayah can self-peel, and that just allows maybe a bit more in the back half of the game. But now that we see the full comps, it's pretty clear the direction that both of these teams want to head. Once again, mid-game power spike coming in from WE, you're basically always going to get that when you draft Xin Zhao Rise. You want to play for that macro advantage that you're going to be able to skirmish with in the mid-game, but the scaling, the team fight of AL, it's terrifying. And not even just the team fight, right? Like, the 4v4, even the 4v5 with Yorick split pushing is horrifying if you are WE. You don't really have a clean answer because, like I said, I really don't like K'Sante in a side lane against Yorick. And so for me, it's really going to be about which part of the map ends up getting the resources. Is it going to be Yorick that ends up getting really strong, or can the Xin Zhao and Rise actually create enough panic in the early and mid game to kind of dissuade AL from going to their own strategy?
Yeah, the way that the first game played out for WE, they opted into a lot of aggressive looks that were punished and outplayed by the side of anyone's legend. Now, you can definitely make some of those moves happen with Xin and Leona as your main initiators and setups here. It just comes down to if WE has, you know, the right setups in particular with all their lanes, you know, having priority on the side of the map that they want to look for, or just having the burst damage. But, you know, Jhin has some plenty of lethality thanks to that 4th bullet early on. Ryze can aid in setting up with empowered rune prisons. Unfortunately, K'Sante, I'm in agreement with you. Not necessarily the most inspiring champion to be locking in for a composition that, you know, at least would like to get a snowball going. But we'll see if WE can get it done.
All right, and we hear the cheers getting us into game number 2. Remember, game number 1 had some action at level 1, so we want to be on the lookout for that potentially repeating here in game number 2, but I think you highlighted it perfectly. I think you're talking about so much setup being coming in from the side of WE as we get further and further along into this mid-game as Flandre runs away from the pressure that Cube and Monki are putting on, but not really much to do here. To me, I'm really looking at Karis. I think he's a big pivot point for how this mid-game is going to end up going. If he ends up getting really far behind, like he is kind of known to do in some of these more even matchups individually, then I think that's going to be a very, very big problem for WE in terms of their macro game. But if he can get ahead and move around the map, I think that opens up a lot, and that to me is what WE need to be trying to force.
And the early lane push is already demonstrated to be a focus point for both Karis and Shanks, just based on the fact that they both took Scorch. So they're trying to push each other around. Hopefully one or the other is going to get the advantage of, you know, creating that health disparity, which then gives them the safety to shove in the wave first and then move with their junglers into the enemy quadrants and trying to get that aggressive vision line control. And in particular the case for AL, if Tarzan is able to track Monki like he did in game 1, then it is so free for the early mid game of AL.
Yeah, and we're also seeing opposite side starts here from the two junglers, which does indicate to me that there's going to be at least some level of contest coming in at some point. Could just be a full clear trade of crabs on both sides if that's what they want to do, but you know, we'll see where the pressure wants to come in. Significantly less pressure, in my opinion, for Tarzan, but Karis is already pretty low in this lane. This is a really nice job by Shanks to be able to kind of push away some of the pressure and burn some of the resources here for Karis with no health pots remaining. So, you know, like the way that Shanks has been able to play this out in the early levels, it's about keeping it up, though.
Yeah, both junglers have been spotted on their respective Raptor camps, but as you pointed out, Shanks having a massive health advantage already is going to get this wave shoved in. And even though they know that Monki is pathing towards the bottom side of the map, it doesn't seem like there's any danger in the shadows for Hope and Kael. While they are pushed under tower, they're still relatively healthy, and they have a lot of ways to outplay some of the dive setups that WE might try to look for. That is still a window that WE will have while Kanavi or Tarzan is on the top side of the map. But does Cube have to fear for his life here? That is the question.
I certainly would be a bit worried if I were Cube in this instance, as we see Tarzan making his way up there. He is going to be spotted on the ward, and Cube respectfully is going to be able to back out. But overall, it looks like it's just going to be a standard full clear coming in from both of these junglers, trading crabs. Not too much going on. Both of them have hit level 4, I should say, and are just going to be looking for a bit more. Teleports burned in the mid lane as well. Pretty standard. At this point, really what I'm going to be looking at is who wants to initiate a lane swap for their bot lane first. If that's going to be WE with the pressure they have, it's going to create some options. Monki is going to be here, but he's on a ward. See if he gets tracked out from that.
Yep. Well, that gives AL a nice tempo window. Tarzan is already based and is beelining towards the bottom side of the map. So by the time that Monki bases, if WE don't get a clean reset here, they'll be forced to stay. And now there's an opportunity for Tarzan to get a free gank timer that Monki cannot respond to.
Looks like he's going to try and take it. The problem is this is also warded, and so they are going to have vision of Tarzan if he does want to walk up, which makes it obviously a lot more difficult. I think the more Noteworthy thing to talk about is that with Tarzan pathing down to the bottom side, he is going to be first to Dragon, spawning in about 20 seconds. If they do want to early prioritize it, they are sending the bot lane back down into the bot lane itself, the AD carry and support, of course, so looks like they do want to try and prioritize this Dragon, especially with all of that vision, you know, being placed by WE there. But once again, if Karis is going to be able to shove and roam and start to get some vision himself for Tarzan and even on Kael, that's going to be pretty massive overall for WE, and it's just really an information game at this point.
Nice for Karis here on the rise to actually not be nearly as a devastating position he was before, considering that Karis was like super low on HP on the first the first couple of minutes of the laning phase. But now that both of these champions have gotten their tiers for themselves, now Karis seems to be trading evenly with Shanks on HP. Shanks is trying to look for a little bit more aggressive trades, but Vampire showing up midway is going to allow WE to get this shoved out. Kael is forced to respond. It seems like WE are going to be slightly in a better position to look for a burn on this Dragon, since Monki is on the bottom side of the map. Taeyoon is shoving in this wave on the bottom side, so they have waves set up for them, but it doesn't really look like it's a immediate priority for WE quite yet.
It's very dangerous for WE to try and fully make this play here. If they step up and end up getting caught out, even just a little bit by a Vi, it can be disaster almost immediately with Rakan as that follow-up engage, and so they play it pretty respectfully, but especially with these mid laners now hitting level 6, I imagine a lot of pressure is going to be coming in from both of them now. The Rise doing a great job of shoving and roaming. We can see that Monki has already started up on the Dragon. Tarzan will be making his way down here, but it's going to be a bit of a difficult contest because of that push in the bot lane for WE.
Yeah. Kael and Hope don't have the easiest way of walking through the choke point, but it's not even contested, so now Kael and Hope are in the river. W are trying to shift their attention to blocking the banana brush entrance here. The Dragon is still leashed. 1800 health. Tarzan is walking around. He could still walk in and just yoink this away from Monki. It's going to be a 50-50. 3-4, 800 HP. It is secured by Monki, and Kael might have gone a little too far forward. Tarzan trying to pick his targets wisely here. Vampire is the one that is super low. Flashes away to safety. Tarzan could be in trouble. Will flash over the wall, but now Shanks is here for the party. I think he already used the shockwave, but the rest of WE are just going to make a clean getaway and not drop a single man.
Huge win there for WE. We talked about how they needed to pressure early because I think the scaling is on the side of AL, but you can see kind of why we talk about the early game from WE being pretty scary. The Vi can't feel comfortable going into that play without really any sort of follow-up. The Zaya's not at the point in the game where she can start like pumping out damage in the way that she needs to right now as Cube gets a little low on the top side. It's Cassante, he'll be just fine, but that's the benefit of Ryze having shove in the mid lane, is we can see that Karis is there to the fight a little bit early. Xin Zhao is able to do a little bit more damage than maybe the Vi is on the other side. It's just a lot of these small factors compounding into a pretty nice win for WE that should give them pressure here for the Grubs in 8 seconds as well.
Yeah, especially since big support keystone difference, Aftershock on Vampire versus Guardian on Kael. Oh, Cube going for the 1v1 against Flandre, and he has Monki in his back pocket just to guarantee it if Flandre sticks around, but flashing that Q3 on the Nitofo strikes allows the York to escape with his life. Monki's still trying to see if he can pressure for these Grubs, but Tarzan is here alongside Kael, Hope, and Shanks. All 4 members showing up. This should guarantee the objective for themselves.
Yeah, no real way to contest this if you're WE. You spent quite a few resources on the top side there. That being said, they're in the area. Monkey's still here. We've seen teams throw it away here before. Will they do it again?
Realm Warp is coming in so that Karis can get there much quicker, I should say. Tarzan is forced to flee. Monki will try to secure this last grub for himself, but he doesn't have a smite. And a teleport is coming in. Cease and desist right on top of Monki. Grand entrance and the shockwave carrier system, but Monki punts the ball away with the Crescent Guard. Tarzan is the first one to drop. They equalize it by finding Vampire in the back, but it definitely could have gone worse for wear on the side of WE. The fact that Monki survives is at least a nice consolation prize, but anyone's legend forcing WE away. They should be able to secure the Grubs for themselves, but no one is going for it quite yet.
Yeah, it's just really difficult for Monki to be able to make his way back to those grubs, and now Tarzan's gonna make a beeline to that side of the map. It's brilliantly played by AL at the start, but they're not quite at their power spike yet. This is still a pretty weak comp in terms of the damage they're able to output. No item on Orianna, nor an item onto the Xayah. So it ends up not really being enough damage to burst down. That's gonna be a combo that's lethal later on in the game, but luckily right now for WE, they're able to at least pull one back. It's a 1-for-1 in the end, but if Tarzan is going to be able to take that grub and, you know, complete the trilogy there, then that's going to be pretty positive. But for now, WE are actually first to the objective, and we could be looking at a potential death push.
Yeah, Tarzan does not have ult available for another, I want to say, 40-something seconds, maybe closer to a minute here. I forget that rank 1 ulti on Vi these days is super long, and Monki denies all 3 grubs away, or the 3rd grub from anyone's legend, so neither team will get the Void Might. They know that Flandre does not have Flash here. Unfortunately for Monki, the Dark Procession does keep him locked in place, and Monki cannot pursue Flandre here. But we're at 10.5 minutes into the game here, Kman, and next objective is going to be the 2nd dragon.
Yeah, and we're going to see some exchanges down in the bot lane because of it. Karis could be in a bad spot. Shockwave down.
Already below 50% HP, grand entrance, flash by Karis, really nicely done by the Rise, and WE's mid laner going to keep himself safe under the tower.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate for Kael because if he wasn't in a position where he immediately started tanking tower, perhaps he could have actually re-engaged on that play, but because he was tanking it before he even really went in, it became a little bit more difficult. Vampire and a Hex Flash over the wall and burn ultimate here. It's a lot committed for nothing.
Yeah, the Solar Flare, I don't know how long it is rank 1 cooldown, but I'm not sure if it's going to be back up before this 2nd dragon of the game, so might have been a little over-eager from the WE support, just trying to see if he could at least burn a Summoner Spell out of Shanks, but he just sidesteps it.
It's definitely not going to be up for the dragon fight, I mean, depending on when it's taken, but I just don't understand. Like, he was never in danger. We saw Shanks backing off. It's just way too greedy in terms of the play here. Kael, though, just going to be trying to establish as much vision as possible here. Dragon is spawning in 20 seconds, and that's definitely going to be the priority here. If WE can grab that, that will be their 2nd, and all of a sudden, another win condition, another out for them could potentially appear. Remember, this is the part of the game that I think they are arguably at their strongest. You're starting to hit your first item power spikes on Xin Zhao and on Jhin here. That's going to create a situation where they should be able to fight, but AL are going to be first to the position.
Yeah, Vampire jumps onto the Rakan, but now gets charmed up by the quickness. Vampire trying to flash away. The rest of anyone's legend turning on to Monki. Crescent Guard keeps some range damage away, but Shanks just walks up and down, smashes the flash. Featherstorm from Hope will ensure that Vampire falls, and Karis without a flash means that he cannot escape the shockwave this time around. Anyone's legend just cleaned out 3 for free.
It's a disaster for WE. It's completely separated from them. They don't have any sort of cohesion or synergy in that exchange. It looks like Vampire wants to go in, but again, no lockdown because that Solar Flare has already been used. There's no Leona ultimate to be able to capitalize on, and so the Leona ends up going in, gets bursted down, and has to run out. Monki then follows up and tries to get a 3-man knockback with his ult, but ends up just in the middle of the rest of the team. We're going to get a chance to see it here. They look like they catch out Kael early on in this fight, but again, look at the damage that's coming down. The lockdown coming in on Vampire. He has to flash out. There's nothing else to do. Monki, at this point, just tries to accept the fact that he's going to die after getting hit by the Rakan ultimate, and at this point, you're just completely separated. There's no damage coming in, and it's really nice follow-through from Shanks. I want to give him a lot of credit on this as well for his positioning on the Orianna, but Cube now just getting solo killed.
Okay, well, maybe the 369, or not 369, Cube Cassante pick is cooking, potentially, and Flandre not having the Trinity Force quite yet, overestimating his damage output in the 1v1. He even had the help of the Maiden, and somehow she wasn't putting in enough work, so WE's top laner at least finding a little bit of gold reprieve, the only person on the map that has a gold advantage in his name.
That was without level 11, by the way. He hit level 11 after that fight, so that's rank 1 ultimate. That's not even a gigantic level advantage coming in from Cube. He just ends up playing it better. We're gonna get a replay here. This is a bad start for Cube, but he ends up just landing all of his damage at the start of this combo and then realizing, like, oh, hey, like, Yorick is, like, not actually able to fight me. Flandre ends up re-engaging, but once again, it's that all-out coming in, and it's just Flandre underestimating the amount of damage that Cassante can put out. This is a pretty good matchup overall for Yorick, and a lot of that is because you need to be able to land consistent damage, you know, to poke him down and to not really allow him to full combo you. Cube doing a great job to kind of push that tempo and force the fight to happen.
Yeah, getting that channel W in the all-out form does a deceptive amount of burst damage since it is true damage, right? So that is always something that you got to keep in mind when you're going for these 1v1s. And Flandre just overestimating his ability to be able to tango with Cube there, but he's looking for his own level 11 power spike so that his maiden is just a little bit more, got a little bit more oomph to it, you know. But we're still at the part of the game where Anyone's Legend is very comfortably ahead in terms of gold. Not a huge gold lead for themselves, but still being able to evade a lot of the power that WE could have had in other circumstances.
Yeah, they certainly do have a lead now, and they might try to grow it here on Karis once again.
No flash still for this Rise, but Vampire is going to make the dive difficult and uncomfortable for them, so the rest of Anyone's Legend have to retreat. That saves Karis' life for now. Still below 50% HP, almost below 25% HP. Definitely will be forced to take a base there. Has teleport to redeploy on the map quickly. The rest of Anyone's Legend will back off for now.
Yeah, it's another dive on Karis that just does not go the way that they want it to. They keep looking for this Rise, and he has so many tools to be able to escape. It's a great job by Vampire to make the roam, and now WE actually a priority on this Rift Herald, which is pretty solid, all things considered. But you talked about the gold lead for AL. It actually looks like they want to try to contest this Rift Herald. This is aggressive from them.
They know that Vampire does not have flash. He gets the stun onto Kael and stops him in his tracks. Cube teleporting over, now looking for a setup, but no one is really in position to be taken on a ride with the all-out, but he buys enough space to guarantee the Rift Herald secure for Team WE, but that leaves Flandre all by himself on the bot side, so he's going to get a chance to unlock the first Tier 1 turret of the game.
Yeah, it's a nice play by Flandre, obviously split pushing there, and, you know, I guess that was the idea from AL, is they wanted to use their teleport to pull 369, or pull Cube, now I'm starting to do it, pull Cube into a fight here, and, they are able to do it. Like, the K'Sante, you know, gives up that side lane, ends up allowing the Yorick to split push and TPs into the fight. Of course, Herald is gone. By that point, I was shocked that AL wanted to even contest it in the first place, but overall, still a lot to like for both of these teams. The thing I really want to point out, you know, we talk about that gold lead for AL. They scale way better in this game, and they certainly scale much more effortlessly. Not only is the Yorick split push condition always going to be a bit of a problem for WE to be able to answer, but you know, we already talked about it. The wombo of Vi, Orianna, Xayah, Rakan, like this front to back, if they even get a 4v4, is incredibly strong. We've seen what it can do without gold. Once we start getting some of these items online, we could be seeing some burst disasters for WE.
Yeah, and while Cube was able to get that one solo kill onto Flandre, it's not like, you know, a permanent advantage being given. Especially since Cube is not able to continuously hammer down the advantage or bring even more members to make it accelerated. Now, Kael opening up and engage here for Tarzan, still holding on to the cease and desist, using the charm of the quickness. The shockwave pulls them right back in. Flandre has teleported to the fray, and someone just got sent up to high heaven, and Monki comes crashing back down to earth alongside the rest of WE, and now Karis is on the run, forced to flash the Dark Procession. The rest of Anyone's Legend are grouping up strong on the top side. There's no objective for them to take, and the only thing that Cube can do is take a tier 1 turn on the bot side of the map.
It's just more gold going in favor of AL, though, and it's on primary options. You can see Shanks is very quietly starting to get very scary, and I think that that is a big problem for WE, because look at the builds on WE when you look across the board. Your two main frontliners here in the K'Sante and the Leona. Well, K'Sante's full armor. He's got the Sunfire and the Bramble, now the Thornmail completed, so nothing to stop that Orianna. Same thing for the Leona as well, but we're going to see replay here. It's just an overstay from WE. AL look like they are maybe going to overextend, but that teleport comes in from Flandre, and at this point, that 4v3 is not looking very WE favored. You know, Kael does a great job to get himself out of there, but Monki is trapped. Karis even has to burn Flash at the end of this play as well. We can even see, now that he has no Flash, he's getting pressured out entirely just by Flandre, so a lot gained off of that play, even if WE are going to be the first to start dragging here.
Yeah, overall 2 turrets now on the side of Anyone's Legend, and Flandre continuing the split push antics of the Yorick. Karis cannot join this fight unless he wants to give up pressure. However, Flandre is recalling, so there's a chance, maybe, for Rise to join the fight, but they don't even need him. WE are able to secure for themselves their second dragon of the game, the overall third one. It is a Chemtech Soul map. Anyone's Legend trying to chase and keep, you know, some distance on WE as they're trying to make their retreat. Cube is eating a lot of it on the way out. Does not go down, but the retreat is very uncomfortable for them, and Anyone's Legend is able to get some damage on this tier 1 turret.
Yeah, great job by Cube to be able to buffer the Recon knock-up with the Unstoppable. We've seen a lot of players attempt that and fail when it comes to that interaction, so nicely done. That play is immediately abandoned by AL because Hope is just perma-pushing, but they're stopping a lot of these backs. Look at Kael and Shanks. They're playing so far forward in terms of how they want to do this. You know, we'll see if it can actually get them anything. Right now, it just looks like tempo, but Tarzan also on the other side. He's going to get spotted out with a blue ward.
Okay, well, Kael got locked down and a little too far forward, but you know what? Anyone's legend, if they are willing to say, you know, support life for tier 1 turret in the mid lane, then hashtag worth.
They clearly wanted that tier 1. They're willing to give up Dragon just to allow Hope a few more seconds of free hitting on the tier 1 mid, and then they're just going to sacrifice their support for the same, but Monki now, you know, going to be a little bit pressured out. It's going to be difficult to take down the Xin Zhao unless you have one of the big damage dealers like Hope available to you at that moment, but you can't underestimate where Shanks is at. Again, 3-0-3 on this Orianna, very close to completing that second full item there. So we will start to see these shockwaves start to really impact the game for Shanks, and we'll see what the answer is going to be on the side of WE. Right now, you're still relying a lot on Ryze to be able to open up the map, but the more that gold deficit starts to grow, especially for Ryze as a champion, the harder this is going to be.
Yeah. Still just a small 2,000 total gold advantage for the side of anyone's legend. Nearly across the board, there's like small individual counterpart advantages, but the majority of that gold, as you pointed out, is in the pockets of Shanks, who is 3-0-3, quietly accumulating a large stat advantage over his counterparts, since Karis has been on the receiving end of multiple visits from Kael and Tarzan and Flandre and Hope sometimes too. So Shanks is now the benefactor of all this subtle pressure slowly building up, and now with Liandry's Torment fully completed, it's not the highest burst damage build from an Orianna, but it will still do some chunking on the side of Team WE.
Are we gonna get a classic game-throwing fight over blue buff? I hope so.
Okay, that Soul Flare just goes wide, and now that's an easy shockwave to initiate. The charm from the quickness rounds them all up, but somehow Monki survives. Karis does not get to live so graciously, and anyone's legend, knowing that it's past the 20-minute mark and they just forced off multiple members from the map, that's a free Otacon.
Yeah, that's why they were positioning on the top side here and playing so aggressive. They understood that if they could force a fight around this area, WE have no way to be able to contest over Otacon. Obviously, things go pretty disastrously for WE, but again, I don't imagine things getting better. We even saw part of the Wombo there. You hit a shockwave on 1-2 members. All of a sudden, Rakan can follow up completely effortlessly. Tarzan can dive the backline, and there's really no answer. If Hope's able to just sit on the backline and get out his own damage, he's going to be just fine. And look again, it's protection coming in from the Xayah.
1v4 in between two towers. Now has to sidestep multiple curtain call bullets, but now Kael gets to step up. Flandre even flanking and stopping the curtain call from reaching third and fourth bullets. Karis feels like he needs to join the fight just to make sure WE do not get collapsed upon, but anyone's legend. Look at the map movements they have made. They've answered better. Oh, Cube gets caught on a ward. He was... Oh, this is not ideal. Cube at least gets the flash over, but Tarzan will fall with the Vault Breaker flat. Okay. He doesn't kill him. It's fine. Anyone's legend. Force away necessary members from the protection of this tier 2 tower, and they're continuing to take advantages everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a silly play from Tarzan trying to catch out a champion with so many shields, but this is what I was talking about in draft when I mentioned the Xayah being a really interesting pick. I know we mentioned that the Vi-Xayah synergy isn't always on point. I'll have to get to my point later, though, as a fight going on here.
Shockwave again, and Cease and Desist guarantees the finishing touches on both Vampire and Karis. Shanks is no longer quietly carrying. He is definitely making a huge statement on the map. 5-0-4, deathless on the Orianna, the biggest shutdown bounty on his head, and I don't think Team WE are ever getting at this game.
And this is it, right? Like, this is the dream of what this draft can become. You've gotten Orianna into such a dominant position. Remember, I pointed it out, Cube had not been building any MR at any point throughout this game up until now. He's got that Spectre's Cowl built. on the top side, but he had been full armor. This Orianna has gotten a chance to completely shred through with this gold lead, and it's been really productive as Tarzan now is going to start up on the Dragon. But once again, I want to reiterate, you know, we talk about the Vi, Xayah, anti-synergy. The way that they can be played together is exactly what we just saw. It's that Vi, Orianna, Rakan, they can dive so deep and play so aggressive, and you don't have to worry about Xayah. She can keep herself safe. 4 members go mid lane to try and catch out a Xayah who's by herself, but she has so many peel tools that she can buy enough time without even really sacrificing all that much for the rest of her team to get there, and then the playmakers can start getting to work. So everything just working out for AL. It all is kind of coming together for them, and this gold lead has continued to balloon. We're sitting at about 25 minutes, and you know, with Baron spawning very shortly, we could perhaps see even more. Cube is getting very low. Shockwave used.
Yep. And anyone's Legend just going to brute force this tier 2 on the bottom side of the map. And the way that you have described how well this Xayah works when everyone else from anyone's Legend is just able to just boldly dive forward and not worry about their AD carry, it goes back to and ties to basically the story about this anyone's Legend roster. The fact that Tarzan can thrive in a world where a majority of his lanes, if not all of his lanes, are doing just fine, being self-sufficient by themselves. Tarzan is able to play the map as efficiently and as optimized as possible, and it gives him pretty much freedom in dictating the pace of the game, as now the rest of anyone's Legend pressuring WE out of this river, and Vampire unfortunately is just too far forward and too slow on the Leona to escape. Lock of the Irons are already used. Crescent Guard will pump back one. It's a 1-for-1 trade, and now the Featherstorm is going to allow Pope to reposition. Tarzan may have gone a little too far forward. Maybe this is a chance for WE to really capitalize. Shanks will survive as Monki looked for the finishing blow, but Hope does fall, and wait a minute, anyone's Legend might have just been caster cursed because WE have just found the best fight they could have asked for this game.
Yeah, it's actually really well played by a lot of members of WE. I want to give big shout outs to Cube and Taeyoon, who I thought did a great job on that fight. We're going to get a replay on that, but the positioning was actually phenomenal from them, and they have a lot more damage than they might get credit for. Flandre has to teleport here into the mid lane to make sure they don't take too much. Luckily for AL, they're not going to lose all that much because of that. Really not a ton to take, but the pings are coming down onto Baron to be able to set it up. We'll see if we can get a replay here. We are just now. We're actually going to see a lot of the positioning on the back end of this fight. Vampire actually gets a 3-man ult down onto the back line. 2-man ult, I guess, but, you know, trades his life for it. One thing to note, Tarzan never once uses ultimate in this fight. Kael just way too deep. Monki doing a great job to be able to push back, and Karis, meanwhile, on Rise is just machine gunning out all of that damage. It's great. Great positioning from Taeyoon as well to set up for the curtain call that he can then blast through the backline with. And Hope's not going to be able to survive. It's actually just well played by WE, a bit over-eager from AL, not using all the cooldowns that they need, but at least for now, it's not going to matter too much. No objective to take off of that, with Baron being the only one on the Rift.
Yeah, I think the only thing that would have been nice for WE had Monki been able to get the kill on Shanks, because that would have been stacks off the Dark Seal, a big shutdown bounty into the pockets of WE. You know, Monki would have not been the ideal benefactor or the recipient of that goal, but still, it would have been a big shutdown and just helping offset the gold deficit and stat advantage that AL is pretty much able to smack WE with and constantly in these fights. So, thankfully for AL, Shanks is still deathless in this game, and WE can at least, off the back of that fight, even though it wasn't as ideal as it could have been, they can at least be confident that, like, hey, if AL are a bit disrespectful with the way they take these fights, it's still winnable for us.
It definitely is. You can't overextend if you're AL. It's not like you have the tankiest comp in the world. If Vi and Rakan get blown up at the beginning of a fight, well, there goes all your playmaking potentially. Like, as much as we want to talk about the Wombo combo, if it goes wide or if it doesn't land on priority targets, like, you don't have the longest, most secure fight in the world. You don't have this big frontline tank that you can play front to back with. You need to be able to execute on whatever engage you end up looking for. So it definitely is still on AL to be able to make it happen. The problem is they still have a ton of pressure on the map, and if WE want to push forward, they have to risk potentially walking into a Shockwave or walking into Tarzan or Rakan, just, you know, being there and setting things up. So it's still a very scary game state for WE, but definitely a lot more open than maybe they thought it was going to be a couple of minutes ago, especially Dragon spawning up in 50 seconds, both teams at 2 Dragons apiece. It's soul point for both of them, and so it's definitely going to be a fight that I expect both to take. We'll see if either want to try and get pressure there early, or if perhaps Baron could still be a priority for either.
Yeah. Overall, a lot more competitive than what Game 1 was like. Oh, looks like Vampire just used a flash as our observer caught it. red-handed, in 4K. Well, at least he still has Hex Flash, so he's not, you know, completely out of, you know, being able to use a summer spell. So,
yeah, some supports like Hex Flash. Tarzan?
Looking for the flank.
Oh, no
it's
way.
Taeyoon is the target, and Kael tries to flash forward with the quickness, but Taeyoon is able to distance himself with the flash. I mean, yeah, no one can follow through. He's way too deep, and now he's able to re-engage the fight with the curtain call. Karis with the Realm Warp is going to bring everyone else back in. Hope tries to reposition with the Featherstorm. Shockwave only hit one member, not that much damage. Monki trying to survive, falls to Flandre on the Yorick, and he's able to make the difference here. And now Cube is separated from the rest of his backline because no one can step up to the Maiden. Flandre being able to be the big equalizer, and Hope flashing forward after Karis will ensure that this Rise doesn't get to machine gun them again. Anyone's Legend still maintaining Tarzan on the map will give them the advantage necessary to take this Baron.
How the hell were they bailed out in that fight? How is it possible that AL can initiate an exchange that poorly and still walk out of it with a victory? That just goes to show how strong these members were on the back end of it. It looks like they're going to be able to get Baron off of this as well, which is absolutely ginormous. We'll see if they want to wait a little bit of time to try and get it on the Shanks. Nah, they just want it now. It does not matter for them, but we're going to get a replay here. This is a miserable engage from AL. This is way too deep. It's way too aggressive. Tarzan and Kael were just completely separated from the enemy team. This Rakan is dead and there's no follow-up. There's no damage coming in, and this is what I mean when I say they still have to execute. They did not, but the Realm Warp comes in here and Flandre just completely shuts it down almost instantly. Vampire's not able to lock anybody down, and Cube is by himself. Look at Hope. He's untouched for a majority of this fight. So much damage coming down from the Xayah, obviously to offset it and to facilitate the rest of Yorick's damage as well, and that means that the overextension then made by WE ends up getting incredibly punished, and it's not just Baron, it looks like it's going to be Soul Point going over to AL as well.
Yeah. And probably the other thing that would have been nice, even though they knocked out Shanks and got a 1,000 gold bounty, it went into the hands of Cube's Cassante. So yeah, I mean, this guy will be a little tankier, but Hope is already well equipped to shred through tanks thanks to the Lord Doms on the third item and just being able to rapidly throw out more feathers and more cooldowns thanks to the Navori Flicker Blade. So it doesn't really seem like the best benefactor of this shutdown, and still an overall 6,000 team gold advantage in favor of anyone's Legend.
Yeah, and so much of that is in the mid lane right now. Again, Shanks is in such a dominant position. One bad misposition from WE, one big shockwave, and the game is just instantly over. You have to be so careful in AL. They're going to look to try to pressure it here as they push down the mid lane tower.
Yeah, Flandre, meanwhile, pressuring bot side thanks to the powers of Yorick and the Maiden. Has he even popped the Maiden yet? No, not quite. You know, he's just using the empowered Baron minions and this wave pushing in. Maiden now being summoned. Solar Flare not really doing anything against anyone's Legend. No one was forced to burn any summoner spells or active items. It really seems like Cube is taking a lot of damage from this Maiden. Meanwhile, anyone's Legend now pressuring the mid inhibitor turret. There's the shockwave! Monki forced to pop the Crescent Guard. Will be able to escape. Vampire, not going to be the case. And anyone's Legend now working with a 5-on-4 guaranteed for the next 30 seconds.
Yeah, they're going to be able to take 2 inhibitors at the bare minimum here. It will be mid and bot going down. We'll see if they want to stay for more. It is a 4v5. They are going to push in here.
Oh, yeah, baby. Let's see how far anyone's Legend can go for the next 20 seconds. Cube taking a lot of damage. Cease and desist right on top of Taeyoon, and he is exterminated. Hope with the feathers will rip it out of his back. Taeyoon bites the dust, and the rest of anyone's Legend will clean house on any remaining members from WE that tries to step up and square up. Shanks flashing backwards, just guaranteeing his life, but that is the series, that is the game. Anyone's Legend sweep WE 2-0.
And it might not have been as dominant as game number 1 was, and it's hard to project something to be that dominant, but it still was a pretty darn good game for anyone's Legend. They end up ending the series 2-0. This is what we wanted to see out of our top team. We might have been a little bit misguided earlier today when, you know, we saw Thunder Talk pull off an upset. No upsets to be found here in terms of any games. It's a clean 2-0, and AL, even with some of their mistakes, still look incredibly solid, and I think have a lot to build off of as a team that could be fighting for the #1 seed.
Yeah, I mean, we know that anyone's Legend is capable of being the best team already by taking a clean 2-0 or a relatively very effective 2-0 off of Top Esports back in week 5, right? But now, the landscape of Group Ascend and eventually playoffs is really shaking up to be super exciting, because you have big players like BLG who are starting to experience their resurgence now with Beichuan in the lineup, and seemingly BLG have, gotten that second wind. Knight is trying to make a name for himself still as one of the best mid laners in the league. I think he was definitely a lot more quiet in Split 1, and BLG as a whole was, a lot left to be desired. But BLG could definitely be, a big name. Anyone's Legend trying to maintain themselves as one of the big names in that top 3, top 4 spot. Top Esports still, being dominant just because of their overall success in the regular season. I think if you look at, while we're waiting on, graphics for this last game, because I'm just going to go ahead and say Shanks is probably MVP for this game. I think that's a good bet. I want to start getting ahead with our producer and look at the standings graphics. It might not be updated quite yet, but I want to look at the remaining teams that have not yet qualified for playoffs yet or locked it in. We're looking at JDG, BLG, and IG. 2 of these 3 teams can lock in playoffs as the 3rd and 4th seeds respectively, and at least make sure that they don't have to go through the play-in stage. And I think those 3rd and 4th seeds that are confirmed by the end of the regular season, Kman, are going to be the teams that are fighting for Split 2 title.
I completely agree. And, JDG has to be mentioned, right? You mentioned BLG as a team that's found a resurgence. JDG 2-0'd them yesterday. I mean, this is a team that has to be considered in that upper echelon. They've been a lot hotter than people want to give them credit for. I think that there is a lot to build off of. Their Pays has obviously been stealing a lot of the headlines and a lot of the spotlights, shown obviously quite a few MVPs in his mantle, but there are so many games down the stretch here for the rest of this split that are going to matter a ton for that middle. We looked at a team like Invictus Gaming. Oh, well, they play Billy Gaming. They have to win that series. JDG and AL also play later on in the week. That's a massive series for JDG in order to try and cement themselves in the upper echelon. Top Esports and Billy end up playing each other, and so we've still got a ton of awesome action to close out Group Ascend here, and that's before we even get into these awesome plans.
Yeah. Because then after play-ins, the playoffs will be the big matches that we look forward to, and it will start being, the final tests and challenges that, these teams have to say for themselves. There'll be no more second chances when we get to that point. And reminder that as we look forward to playoffs and then eventually international stakes, LPL will get to send 2 teams to MSI this year. So if you are able to at least make the finals, you will go to MSI, right? You will get to see some international competition as well. So right now, I think it's really assuring that it's not just Top Esports and Anyone's Legend guaranteed in that top 2 and everyone else is like, oh yeah, they'll play for scraps. No, like there's legitimately 4, if not 5 teams that can make a run for that title. The fact that our top 4, top 5 have just been all over the place trading blows, like, oh, well, this team will, slap the crap out of, 2-0ing this team, but then they drop 2-0 to this other team that's like technically below them in the standings. So like you don't know who's going to be victorious. It just comes down to who's better on the day of.
Yeah, and that's what makes it fun. You mentioned, 4 or 5. You're absolutely right. JD Gaming, Billy, they're right up there in the top 4. We've seen what their form can look like at their best. We can't count Invictus Gaming out. This is a team, obviously, with a ton of veterans, but they're in phenomenal form. This isn't the bad form IG that we've seen at times this year. They've won 4 series in a row. They haven't lost in 2.5 weeks. This team has been on fire as of late, and, they're right up there with them. So excited to see what's going to happen for MSI, for the region, but AL, at least today, definitely kind of proving that, hey, if you're an LPL fan and maybe you're a little bit tired of the Top Esports international saga that's been going on the past couple of years, maybe you want some fresh faces in the international scene, well, AL is an org that is finally starting to find the success that they've been looking for a long time, and they might get to make their international debut, especially if they play like they did today later on in the playoffs.
I almost did a double take when you said 2.5 weeks, but I went back in the match history, and yeah, you're right. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 4 or 5 series that IG has won back to back. And it's just surprising because even when you look at IG, that team consistency is definitely not in their wheelhouse. But when they're firing on all cylinders, I mean, that's a team that, has members that has won international championships in every single role. Most of them world championships. Kael, the only one not with a world championship, but he's gotten MSI titles on his back. So, like that, it goes to show that this is a really exciting time to be watching LPL. It might be a little stressful for the heart and the mind, and if you're trying to really guarantee that like one certain team will always win, that's just not going to be the case, unfortunately, because everyone is super competitive and consistency is not necessarily the most polished thing between all 5 of these teams.
The LPL is so back. Like, this is the LPL I remember from a decade ago, where everybody's just throwing stuff at the wall and we're just trying to see what ends up landing. 2 of these teams are going to make MSI, and 3 of them are going to feel really hard done. And I think that's the fun of it, right? Like, we talked about Invictus, that series that they lost to kind of start their winning streak right before, they lost to Top Esports 2-1. They took a game off of TES. It's not like they got blown back by a bad team. This is a team that has consistently been competing for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they're considered the weakest of the group. BLG have obviously looked crazily improved, but I'm just excited. I think that there is so much to like about the LPL right now, and we got to see a lot of that on display today with both Top Esports and Anyone's Legend both showing up, but player of the game coming in, and you were right. It is definitely going to be Shanks.
Boom! We are aligned. We were able to call it out. Shanks only dying 1 time, and that was because Anyone's Legend had a little too much fun sending it 2 screens away through multiple jungle corridors, and Shanks going, guys, my ball can only go so far. Can you please not, send it that far? But sometimes as Anyone's Legend and any of our top teams, you gotta limit tests, you gotta just send it for the boys, see what happens, but it's okay. At the end of the day, Anyone's Legend still walk away victorious. And you know what? Who also walks away victorious? Us on the unofficial broadcast here for LPL, because thanks very much to our elite coffee supporters, Aaron Soup, Monk, and Force. Without their pledged financial contributions, help level up the broadcast and help give back to the cast and crew who strive to give you an English LPL product every single day. As always, it is a pleasure to be casting and working alongside you, Kman, as well as the rest of the broadcast staff and crew here. Before we go, any other words that you would like to share?
I cannot wait for what the end of the LPL split looks like. Raafaa, it's been incredible. I believe this is my last cast of the regular season, so it's been an absolute pleasure getting to cast with you, and hopefully we can get some bangers to close it out.
Yeah, Kman, it's been a pleasure working with you. This has been your official casting debut of any Tier 1 related product, and that is super cool to have. And make sure to check out Super Kman Rocks content on YouTube. This guy covers almost every single pro league in the world. I don't know how you have the sanity and the time to do that, because I can barely keep up with LTA while doing NACL and LPL. So props to you, man. But again, thank you to everyone in the chat, both on Twitch, on YouTube. Something to any Korean supporters and chatters as well if you're watching the broadcast. And to anybody that's watching the VODs, also shout out to you guys. Well, until then, that concludes week 7. Tomorrow begins week 8, the last week of the regular season. It's only a few days before we get into play-in stage, and that's going to be super hype. So until then, stay healthy, stay safe. See you next time.